When I say the words Juan's delivery truck, what are the thoughts that come to mind for you? Now, I don't know my entire demographic here, but I feel like we scale, somewhat middle aged, younger, millennial type age to older. I don't think, we're dipping into Gen, the Alpha generation or any in between here, Gen X, Gen Z. I think that I'm speaking mostly to 30-year olds, maybe 27 might be the cutoff, but older than me. I'm 30, so people that are older than me know the brand Schwann's, and when I think of Schwann's and that yellow delivery truck, I immediately get taken back to leafing through that booklet. And it wasn't necessarily actually leafing through it, as my grandma Michelle in her kitchen, she was the one that would get it on a semi regular basis. I think it was like every 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know. She had that little sticker that they gave you. You put it on the calendar so you know when the truck is coming. And would be in her kitchen. She'd be leafing through the booklet while the delivery driver's standing in there, thinking, about what you want. And I'm just waiting for her to get to the frozen treat section so that we can decide if we're getting ice cream cones or fudge sickles that week. And more often than not, we got the ice cream cones and we just absolutely devoured them. I think if we got them like on a Thursday, they were gone by the end of the weekend. I think it was a 12 pack, maybe 16. They were gone by the end of the weekend. Now, why in the world am I bringing up Schwann's and the delivery truck and ice cream cones? It may be because I'm hungry at the moment and I saw something on the internet that Schwann's is no longer a thing. It's still a company. It's something called Yellow, and a part of me didn't die, but it just a part of me is sad that it's not Schwann's anymore. It's a new company, branded some of their different. But anyways, when you're looking through the week 3 slate for Purdue fans and for me, I'm kind of just waiting until we get to this game at night because I think this is going to be the game that is going to be the most entertaining. Is going to feature a lot of big plays. It's going to be very entertaining and a sweet watch. Sweet as an ice cream cone. Man, that little chocolate at the very bottom of the cone. Mwah. Welcome into the Behind the Rails of Purdue podcast. I'm your host, Brice Vance. This podcast is on the Believe Network. Make sure you subscribe, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Behind the Rails. This game against Syracuse is night game, prime time, first scheduled prime time game. Last week at Virginia Tech turned into a night game because of the long weather delay. But this game on Saturday at a sold out Ross-Ade Stadium feels like it. And I talked about it a little bit, with some of the games that are going to be later in the season, and you hope that they're at night so you have chances to have more juice in that stadium. And that happens with night games. That's why Penn State has their night out or their whiteout at night most of the times, not this year. And why a lot of those Purdue upsets feel like they come at night when the game's at home. And having this game at night against Syracuse, a quality opponent on the similar level as Purdue, feels right. Feels like it's shaping up to be a very, very good game. And I think there's a lot at play that could make this a very entertaining game. we're going to go through the things to watch for. We're going to go through some of the X factors, and we're going to finish up with the prediction to end the show. But I want to first start off this conversation about Syracuse, who is a 2.5 point favorite. This game is going to be on NBC 7:30. This game last year, I think it was a noon kickoff last year at the JMA Wireless Dome. In my heart, it's still the Carrier Dome. This game was wild. I think it was like 25 total points scored going into the fourth quarter, and then it blows up in the last eight 8 to 9 minutes of the game. Teams going down and scoring on big plays. Syracuse, as a lot of Purdue fans know, end up scoring a couple touchdowns, including one with like 19 seconds left to kind of secure the victory. And that's the type of game. I don't know if it's going to be that wild back and forth in the last 8 minutes of the game, but I think it's a back and forth type contest just because of what you have at quarterback. And specifically on the Syracuse side, you have Garrett Schrader, who was in that game last year, has some newer targets this year outside of Arondé Gadsden and Isaiah Johnson, who both caught touchdown passes in last year's win. Gadsden might not play. He got nicked up in the Western Michigan game. He might not play in this game. As of recording this podcast, it's still unknown if he's going to play in the game. So that takes away a huge target for Syracuse and Garrett Schrader. And it takes away from him in the running game as far as a blocker, but he's probably the most trusted target that Schrader has. And going up against a better defense in Purdue than what Schrader and Syracuse have faced in the last two matchups. I mean, another note right off the top, Syracuse has played nobody. Nobody. They've played Colgate, who's an FCS school, and they played Western Michigan, who might be the worst team in the MAC this year, between them and possibly Kent State. I think that the level of play that Syracuse is going to see compared to the last 2 weeks obviously takes, I think, a big step up, and is a step that, have they been tested yet? What are they going to be like when they get, punched in the mouth? Because they got punched in the mouth in the first 30 seconds against Western Michigan. Western Michigan broke off a 70 or 80-yard touchdown run in like the first 30 seconds of the game last week, and then did absolutely nothing the rest of the game. Syracuse shut them down. But I think when you look at last year's matchup and try to draw takeaways on what this game will be like, I think that it's going to be quarterbacks going back and forth, leading their teams on touchdown drives or on drives, because we've seen, at least here in the early going, Syracuse can sustain some drives. They can have some big plays. I think I had a note in here that Schrader has 12 plays of 15 yards or more so far this year. And again, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's just a point that you need to know going into this game, that the level of competition that they have not faced is not been good. So they're facing a significantly better team in Purdue coming up this week. And I'm interested to see how they take that challenge on, and if they do show that they are capable of being a good team. If you look at ESPN's Football Power Index, they project this as a 9-win team in Syracuse. And yes, they don't play as difficult as a schedule as Purdue, but this is going to be an 8-9-win team. And if Purdue doesn't play Ohio State and Michigan in the same year, Purdue is looking at close to 7-8 wins team. So is a 7-8 win team. So these two teams, as I think I said on last week's pod, that, or last time we spoke, that these two teams are on a similar level. I think that they have very good mobile quarterbacks that have strong arms. They have quality out wide at the tight end position, at receiver. I think they both have good running backs. LaQuint Allen is, I think, capable of breaking off some big runs that he broke off, I think, a couple last week against Western Michigan. And obviously, Purdue has three guys in the backfield that are capable of getting you some yards, and a couple of them that are capable of breaking off some big runs, which I'm hopeful that we see more of this week after what they did against Virginia Tech last week. So I think both defenses are improved. I think Syracuse has a pretty darn good defense, coached by Rocky Long, the former San Diego State head coach. Before he was at Syracuse, I think he was at UNLV as kind of a defensive assistant before coming to Syracuse. And he's had a reputation of knowing how to get his defenses to play very hard, aggressive, and just be good. I mean, San Diego State for the longest time had one of the better defenses in college football, and I think that Syracuse is going to be a good challenge for this offense, as I think Virginia Tech was as well. I think they have a good secondary. I'm not sure how much pressure they'll be able to generate. I think they blitz more than Virginia Tech does. I heard a stat that Rocky Long's defense go about 50% with bringing pressure, so that's something to look out for in this matchup. So I think that these teams are very similar in a lot of ways. So that's something to watch out for. And this game is going to be back and forth. It's going to be even, I believe, all the way throughout, and should be very entertaining. So let's get a little bit deeper into Syracuse and what to look out for. Syracuse is I mentioned that football power index. They are at 18. So according to that index, Syracuse is a top 20 team in the country. For reference, Purdue is at 59, one spot behind Colorado. And to me, Colorado has faced two Power 5 teams that are not very good. I think both of those teams are going to struggle to get to bowl eligibility this year. But Purdue is, middle of the pack, slightly above average. If you look at where the cutoff is about 65, so they're slightly above average. So ESPN's FPI thinks very highly of Syracuse, but again, I think it's taking into account that they've played nobody and have been pretty efficient on both sides of the ball so far, not allowing a whole lot of points and scoring a lot. They've outscored their first two opponents, Colgate and Western Michigan, 113-7. So that's the quality of competition that they faced. Rondé Gadsden, questionable, I think, for this game. I didn't really get any insight with Dino Babers' press conference earlier this week. Last year, had some pretty impactful numbers, impactful catches, including the game winner against Purdue last year. So if he's out, it's a big loss for Syracuse. Was almost 1,000-yard receiver last year, had 6 touchdowns in 2022. So I think outside of him, I think that receiving core has improved to from where they were last year. Schrader has spread the ball around to about 4 different guys that have about 7 to 8 catches, all around 120 to 150 yards, I think. So he spread the ball around quite a bit. As Purdue knows, very capable runner. His mobility, I think, is his biggest asset when he gets in trouble. He can take off. He broke off a couple of runs last week against Western Michigan that turned into either big plays or touchdowns. So taking into his mobility, I think, is an important thing. I think if you're probably Purdue, you're probably going to put maybe a spy on him and just have somebody waiting back there just to make sure that he doesn't flush the pocket and get outside and have his receivers continue to work downfield, because that's one thing that I did notice when watching the Western Michigan Syracuse game back, was that when Schrader does get outside the pocket, he does do a good job of keeping his eyes downfield Now, he is going to force some throws. So I would expect the percentage of interceptable balls to be higher than what it was last week against Grant Wells. Didn't really feel like he forced the issue or threw into a lot of tight windows last week, or allowed his receivers to go up and make a play. Schrader's going to do that. Schrader's going to, throw the ball into a guy that might be look like he's covered tightly, but allow his receivers to go up and make a play. And he has big wide receivers that can go do that, including Isaiah Jones. So I think that the secondary needs to play at a similar level or better, that you hope they get better as the season goes along than what they did these last couple of weeks. We saw improvement. We saw signs of improvement with this secondary, and not a lot of guys running wide open across the middle. There was just a couple of instances, and we addressed those. Now, hopefully, Purdue addresses those and shores those up because they're if you can get Purdue in some uncomfortable situations, you can take advantage of that secondary. So, but I think with what we saw from Markevius Brown, Marquise Wilson, I think was a definite improvement. And I really feel like they didn't get burned or beat at all. And you have Dylan Thieneman, who plays a deep center field, hoping to keep everything in front of him and not allow those deep shots that I think Schrader may take more than what Grant Wells did last week. So I think that Schrader likes to take those deep shots. Like I said, he has 12 plays of 15 yards or more. But I think that there are opportunities for the secondary outside of Thieneman and Cam Allen. Maybe one of the corners, can come up with a interception this week, because I think there will be opportunities too, with the way that Garrett Schrader likes to play. He's a little bit of a gunslinger. So I think there's a good chance for the secondary to come up with an interception or two this weekend. Continuing with the Syracuse offense, their offensive line is a mess. It's an absolute mess. And Garrett Schrader was running for his life at times against a Western Michigan team that, like I said, I don't think is going to be all that great this year. And it was on the heels of a performance where they didn't look great against Colgate either. They rushed the ball decently. Not a ton of running lanes for LeQuint Allen to run through, but I think this is an area where Purdue can take advantage. I think that with their defensive front and what they've shown so far, getting after the quarterback, having multiple guys with multiple sacks and tackles for loss, this is opportunity for this Purdue defensive front that has looked strong and has been their strength of this defense so far to really continue to shine against a offensive line that is one beat up. I think they're without one of their starting tackles for the next week or so, and then the guys that they're getting back from injury, possibly this week, expect them to still maybe not be 100% coming into this game. So I think that should be a huge advantage for Purdue to get after Schrader, to clog up running lanes like they have, and force Schrader into those uncomfortable situations where he is throwing into double coverage or throwing up a prayer and hoping that his receiver comes down with it. I think this has a chance for Purdue to get 4 to 5 sacks in this game. I think that is a real possibility just because of how bad this offensive line is. And it's not even just how they've played, it's pre-snap as well. In their own building, in what was formerly known as the Carrier Dome, they had 4 false start penalties in their own building last week. Can you imagine? That's insane. And if you can have a sold out Ross Aid going crazy, that's just been waiting for this night game all day. Some of these fans, are going to be lubricated and ready to go. And I'm interested to see how, this new configuration handles a night game. I think it's going to be a great environment. Like I said, I think this should be a great game, entertaining nonetheless. But an offensive line that has 4 false start penalties in its own building, can you imagine what they're going to have on Saturday in a sold out Ross Aid with that audience, that crowd being full throat, ready to go? I think this could be a disaster week for this offensive line for Syracuse that is hoping to shore it up because I think they have good weapons. I think they have a solid quarterback, but if that offensive line is just going to continue to be a mess, this is a good week for Purdue to take advantage of that. As if this was a couple weeks down the line where they had an offensive line that is fully healthy and these guys have got meaningful snaps and played in a couple of games against more quality opponents, then I would say that it's not as big of an advantage. But this is the way that we've seen this defensive front shine in these first couple of weeks, especially in the run game. I think this is a huge opportunity for this defensive front to really, really shine this week. I will say that Syracuse, I think, has more team speed, and I think that showed out more on the defensive side of the ball. I think their weapons on offense at receiver, I think, are faster than what Virginia Tech has. Outside of Jalen Lane, I didn't really feel like Virginia Tech had a ton of speed that could break away from you. I think Syracuse has a little bit more of another gear that they can go to. So that'll be one thing to pay attention to as far as their receivers. But I think they have more speed on that defensive side of the ball as well. I don't really know what to expect fully out of this defense because I think that this defense has the potential to be very good. They just haven't really been tested. They've broken once, and that was on the second or third play of the game last week where they allowed a huge touchdown run. Other than that, they've been solid. They got after Western Michigan's quarterback quite a bit, so a huge test for this offensive line that I thought held up pretty well against a Virginia Tech defensive front that, like I said last week, didn't pressure a ton, only brought 5, maybe, 20% of the time, 25% of the time, maybe more. But they really didn't get after Hudson Card, only made him, scramble or get out of the pocket a handful of times. I think Syracuse is going to bring a lot more pressure and more than just 5. They're going to bring 5, 6, maybe occasionally they'll an all-out blitz 7. So I think they're definitely going to try to put more pressure on Hudson Card and not allow him to sit back there and get to his second and third read so comfortably and hit those receivers down the field that have made those moves, because I don't really think there was a ton for Card to get to as far as deep shots down the field. After rewatching the game, it looked like that the secondary kind of had the clamps on that receiving unit last week. They were still able to, make some plays, but we really only saw one big play get down the field to TJ Sheffield for more than a 20-yard gain. I think that was the only pass that ended up going past 20 yards last week. So I'm interested to see how Purdue attacks that. I think that there is going to be, if you're going to run the blitz at Purdue more often and they handle it well, like I think they can, with the running back staying back and blocking, I think there is going to be opportunities for bigger plays. I think there's going to be chances for Deion Burks to get more involved. Coach Walters spoke to that in his Monday press conference, that they did a good job of having more than one defender on him at times. So I think there's possibly going to be more opportunity for bigger plays. You get Garrett Miller, excuse me, I was mixing him with Max Clare. I think with Garrett Miller, as he gets more and more involved in this offense, that was another thing that, Ryan Walters stressed, that it was they're going to bring him along slowly. It's not going to be, hey, he's back and he's going to play 60 snaps right away. Expect him to play probably 20 to 35 snaps, 25, 35 snaps this week, with a bigger play load coming in the next couple of weeks. So expect to see a good rotation of him and Max Clare as well. We did see another change in the depth chart, a new addition to the two deep, Gus Hartwig on there for the first time. He was asked by the media in his press conference on Monday what that means. He said he might play. He really didn't commit to whether or not Gus was going to play or not. But I still think Josh Kaltenberger played well enough last week. So if Gus does come back, maybe there still is a rotation between those two guys. Gus might play the first two series, takes the next one off. I think there could be something like that to kind of give the Garrett Miller treatment of bringing him in slowly, so that he's fully ready to go when conference play starts next Friday against Wisconsin. So this offensive line, I think, is going to be tested a little bit more than what it was last week. I think even Fresno State, I thought, brought a little bit more pressure than what Virginia Tech did. So I'm expecting it to be tested, but I think they're going to handle it well as they've kind of grown and improved over the first couple of weeks. So I'm excited for where this offense could go and what they're capable of against a more aggressive defense in Syracuse, and see if they can take advantage of that aggressiveness and beat it. Beat the blitz with passes over the middle, or a more quicker throws, and letting players get in space and do some plays. And we're starting to see emergence of different guys. We saw Yassine, make a couple of big plays in that game against Virginia Tech. We saw Max Clare make a couple of good catches as well. So it's more than just Deion Burks and a TJ Sheffield. I'm interested to see if there's anybody else that's going to crack that rotation here early on in this week. See if we get any more run for maybe Marshawn Rice out there. Does Andrew Swinski get into the rotation at all? We'll see. But I think that hopefully, Maccabee has the same type of production, maybe breaks off an even bigger run. Still, man, I'm still waiting for him to break out a big run. More than 50 yards. He's been a little bottled up here, but I'm waiting for it. We saw Tracy break off a couple of big runs, and maybe he breaks off a 50-yarder or a big run for a touchdown. I'm still waiting for that to happen. I would like to see a little bit more big plays within this offense. So we could see that in a more aggressive type defense this week against Syracuse. X factor for both sides. I think it's the Syracuse offensive line for them. Are they going to be improved? How are they going to face a defensive front like this? Are they going to handle it well? My early thinking is that they won't, but I'm okay if I'm wrong. I'll be all right. So, but I just don't think that they're going to handle it well. I think they're going to get pushed around a little bit with this big defensive front. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects their offense that has been pretty efficient and pretty explosive here in the first couple of weeks. On the Purdue side, I'm going to go Marquise Wilson. I think with an better receiving core overall than what they faced last week, I think it's imperative that the secondary and Marquise Wilson show up. And he made some good plays. He, I think, had a pass defend on that final throw at Virginia Tech to stop that drive on fourth down. So I think that he's capable of it. I really do. So I think there is opportunity for him to possibly come up with an interception this week, and I would gladly welcome that. How important is this game for Purdue? I said that they needed to go at least 2-1 for them to have a good shot, a good run at making a bowl game. And if you lose this game, you're 1-2 in your non-conference games against a Syracuse team that I think a lot of people think is better than Purdue. I think they're very similar. This game could go either way, but this game is important for Purdue to win. It is. A lot of most of these games, I mean, that I think are 50-50 games. I mean, we're going to start heading into a stretch where it's going to be some toss-up games. Have you looked at the results of the Big Ten West so far? It's not overwhelming. There's no team that's looked overly dominant. Um, I still think that, man, if Purdue can shock the Big Ten, shock me, shock its own fan base next week against Wisconsin and beat them, it's a very outside chance as of right now. And I know a lot of Purdue fans don't like facing the Badgers. They don't have a good history against them, but this game I think will just continue to build that momentum that last week hopefully started, because they faced some adversity and they overcame it. And it wasn't so much to get that first one out of the way, but it helps. It helps. It instills a little bit of belief. And if you beat a quality team in Syracuse, like I think they can, then the hope for picking up a win over Wisconsin, I think, increases even more. Even more. Prediction time. Like I just said, I think Purdue can win this game. I think I said that very same thing against Virginia Tech and turned out to be a win. So I think Purdue can win this game. I think Purdue will win this game. I think it's going to be a juiced up crowd Saturday night on NBC, first scheduled primetime game of the year. I think it's going to be a raucous environment. I think you're going to cause problems for that Syracuse offensive line, but I think that this offense is probably going to find another gear here soon, and I think it could do it against a defense like Syracuse's. So I got Purdue 31, Syracuse 28. Another close game. Said it before. I'm going to say it probably another 1,000 times the rest of the year. Close game. A lot of these games are going to be close, going to make you feel uncomfortable, going to have you on the edge of your seat. But I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think Purdue's going to come out on top, and I think it's going to taste just as sweet as that ice cream cone from the Schwans, man. Can you believe they're not Schwans anymore? Man, I I looked it up and I was like, they're not Schwans anymore. Company called Yellow. I mean, that's just a part of my childhood just went away, gone into the ether. Man, good memories. Good memories. I'm I'm assuming it's still a delivery type service where you order food and they deliver it to your house, but it's not the same. It's not the same as the guy coming into your kitchen, you looking through the manual, picking out what you want. He goes out to the truck, boom. You got meals, frozen treats right there. Don't even have to wait for the person to grocery shop for you. It was already in the truck, ready to go. They brought the grocery store to you. Ugh, I could go on, but I got to end this podcast sometime soon. So thank you so much for tuning in to this preview show of the Behind the Rails of Purdue football. I've been your host, Brice Vance. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow on social media. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and make sure you subscribe specifically on YouTube. I'll have a little bit of an announcement on the recap show on Sunday about the show after the Wisconsin game. Gonna try to do something different with that broadcast. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're following on social media to find out what that news is. I'll probably be posting it on there before I announce it here. So make sure you are tuned into the socials and subscribed to the channels. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Behind the Rails. I will see you guys on Sunday.